Welcome, everyone. So, this is Rocket Lab Weekly EP021. And both me and Matt are reporting. I mean, you are actually still on vacation. You even changed your name to Matteo Capital. I just came back from a ski vacation. I suppose this is all the Palantir money. We were both big Palantir investors. And now we just need all this Rocket Lab money to start happening soon so that we can take more vacations, no?
Well, I've been having a lot of conversations with people over the past several days, and I think a lot of people are still playing the short game. This is a long-term player game. I think the true patient folks that are within this company will realize the true fortunes that are going to be coming with it. And, these things take time. They're big engineering projects. It's literally rocket science what these guys are doing. And I think a lot of people need to stop worrying about the quarter to quarter. And I think a famous quote that I can use from Bezos, which I'm sure we might talk about a little bit about today as well. But a good quote that he kind of says is like, the next quarter really doesn't matter to him as a CEO. He's focusing on the next 5-10 years down the road. And the quarter that we're reporting today was really kind of banked, 3-4 years ago by the decisions that they made back then. And so if you think about it, there's not much that a lot of these guys can do other than just continue to execute as well as they have since 2006. And, I think the patience game is in. But with respect to the Matteo Capital, yeah, I'm a little bit south of the border here, and happy to take this call from Playa del Carmen in Mexico. And always a good time to talk about Rocket Lab. So excited to be here.
That's dedication. You're on vacation and you're still doing your Rocket Lab week.
Well, I love this, right? This isn't I'm not here for the money. I'm here to chat, and it's a hobby of mine. And the investing piece is for the money, but being on here, I don't do it for the money. If I did it for the money, I would have probably stopped 5-6 years ago when I started. There's not a lot of money in YouTube, but the community building and stuff like that. I mean, the ability to learn from being able to push in is just as much as you get out of it, I think, in the long term. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up this point because, there really isn't a lot of money to be made on YouTube. And plus, if we do our work well and our due diligence well, we make like 1,000x more money on our investments. So I'm also here for the fun of it. And it's nice to make money from YouTube, but the big money comes from being right on our stocks. And what is the story with Matteo Capital? I'm just interested.
People always, Matty Capital, Matt Capital, whatever people wanted to call it. And then just because I'm south of the border, it turned into Matteo Capital. So there it is.
Okay, good. Now we know.
Head trader, head analyst, head of PR, all in one. So you get anybody who talk to Matty Capital, you just talk to me.
Chief futurist or whatever ARK has a post
chief
like
economist. This. Yeah, chief economist, whatever you need.
Awesome. So let's talk about some Rocket Lab news. We can start with, as you said, let's not focus on the short term, but just for this podcast, let's do it a little bit. I forgot to share my screen. Here we go. So I felt like there was a lot of good news this week, and somehow all that the stock did was falling this week. So I think that's more of an opportunity because the company seems to be executing amazingly. And if I look at Palantir lately, when there is good news, the stock goes up like 30-40%, in a week. And then everybody wishes like we would have bought, a week ago. And Rocket Lab is the opposite. There is like good news and the stock goes down. There is new launch announcements and the stock goes down. They do things that, probably 3 other company is able to do, like re-entry of a space medication factory, and the stock goes down. It's just comical to me at this point. Do you have any comments on this, or?
Well, I think that's just par for the course, right? I think the real thing that's going to be dragging the stock in the short term is the lack of profitability that the company currently has. And I think until we get over that hump of massive capital inflow into the organization with Neutron, I really think it's going to be tough to really value the company appropriately. I was just having the conversation over a cigar about how the price to sales of even Rocket Lab is massively deflated comparatively to some of the competitors in the space. And Rocket Lab is truly establishing themselves as the number 2, number 3 in the space. And why shouldn't their price to sales be comparable? It's literally a fraction of that of, say, SpaceX, but yet they're looking to create a very similar sort of program that SpaceX itself is trying to show. And Spice said that at length at TD Cohen. And I think we'll eventually get ourselves to a point where we're at a 20-30x price to sales. But I think with the scarceness of the profitability right now, it's a little tough. And so I think by the time, you get Neutron on the pad and a lot of that influx of capital into the business kind of starts to go away in the first half of 2025, I think it's going to be very difficult to see the true benefits of all the work that's been put into it, right? So it's going to be fun between now and then. I think there's going to be a lot of volatility, but I'm fairly bullish that we'll see $15 by the end of 2025.
Ooh, that's a big that's a big one there. We will revisit that one, and I really hope that you're right. And that, like, it's so weird because on Rocket Lab, I feel that you need to be right on the valuation, and then you need to be right on what the market thinks about Rocket Lab's, like what the market sentiment is about Rocket Lab. And I think it's very peculiar because you can be right on one and miss the other one, and then the stock will still be $4. But if you're truly long term, then eventually, in the long term, it's a weighing game, right? Cool. So here is some Rocket Lab news. I don't know if when I was skiing, I saw this tweet here from Space Talks. And it also coincided with like a -4% day. And I don't know if you saw this. This got me really confused. I might have been the only one, because for a second it seemed like they took a new $120 million loan. And I did a little bit of digging, and if this was correct, and this Trinity Capital, they did announce it basically on the 20th of February on their website or to their investors. But essentially, this is the same loan that they took in the beginning of January. It was just announced, like Rocket Lab announced it back then, and Trinity Capital announced it now. And I wanted to clear this up in case other people had this. I don't know if you saw this tweet or it caused any confusion to you.
No confusion to me.
Okay, good. So for anyone that is watching, there is no new Rocket Lab loan. There is no new dilution. Somehow, for some reason, this lending company announced 1 month or 1.5 months after Rocket Lab has announced the loan. So no new loans from there.
So I'll add some color. So this was announced by Rocket Lab by around the turn of the year. And basically, for those that remember, Rocket Lab had a $100 million revolver for, I think, Hercules Capital that was outstanding, due to be repaid June or July of 2024. And so this Trinity Capital piece is really that. It allows them to take initial, I think, $120 million, and then subsequent $20 or $30 million for working capital if necessary on kind of a revolver. And that's kind of the announcement that is here. So now they are able to basically have no current debt going into 2024 that I'm aware of, and really clear the slate up until, from what I remember, probably the 2026, 2027 timeframe. So no debt is due from the company, as far as I'm aware. I'll have to dig deeper into the 10K once it comes out after the fourth quarter earnings. But as far as I was aware, they had close to $300 million plus in cash, at the end of the fourth quarter, and that was really the only piece of current debt that was coming due. And so now that that's kind of been pushed out, there is no current debt. They now continue to have more capital, and they've subsequently done the capital raise, which I'm sure you've seen and we've talked about in the past, the $335 million. So this company is well capitalized. I anticipate we'll end 1Q with over $500 million in cash, maybe even more than that. I haven't really been able to do all the numbers in my head, but basically I'm sure they've been able to add a crap ton of capital to the back end. And yes, that means debt, but guess what? So does every company that you invest in the S&P 500 have debt. So it's not a bad thing. The only thing that I think people are scared of is at the moment that these guys are not profitable. So as soon as you're able to look at the profitability piece and be able to understand, how much capital these guys are making on a or cash flow these guys are making on an annual basis, that's when it's going to be a little bit easier and more traditional to be able to value the company. But I think right now it's so difficult to do so because of that lack of net income profitability. But I'm anticipating it'll end up doing well in the long term.
Awesome. And so then the next news that we touched on a little bit is that Rocket Lab and team successfully returned Varda's. Let me just share the screen. W1, I think, is the name of the. Do you know how to say the full name of the spacecraft?
It's been so long. Was it the Winnebago one, if I remember?
Yeah. I just never know how to say the Winnebago. Does it mean anything, or is it just the word salad? Or
I think it's just a Winnebago, from what I understand, is just kind of like a travel vessel that I think is kind of like an RV, if I remember correctly. It's like an American RV, but I could be 100% wrong on that.
Cool. So Peter Beck writes, Rocket Lab Space Systems team are incredible. Chalk up capsule reentry to the list of core competencies and welcome to a very, very small club. Here you can see more pictures of what the spacecraft landing looked like. I was actually surprised how small this was. And fun fact, as far as I understand, it was SpaceX who launched this spacecraft, but it was Rocket Lab's photon stage that was powering the like putting it into the correct orbit and like making the re-entry. Am I correct on this one?
I'm trying to remember. I know that they made a couple of them, or will be making a couple. I don't remember who exactly put it into space, but you might be right there. It's been a minute since I've looked at it. But I know that they built the satellite itself, which was definitely part of the partnership for that, which it allows me at least to think with the success of being able to bring back to Earth, and then also being able to have a successful thing that was, I think, only supposed to stay in space for 4 months and ended up staying in space for 8. So that means the solar panels worked as expected, and many of the items and batteries worked as expected. I don't know if there were solar panels, so I might have to retract that statement. But regardless, everything was supposed to last only 4 months. It lasted 8. And with that, we're able to bring it back successfully. It means that we're going to continue to have a good business with Varda as long as they are in business. So I personally follow them to be able to see what they're working on, and hopefully they get good results so they can continue their research, which obviously will help employ Rocket Lab.
Yeah. Do you think that they are, because we saw that on the last Electron launch, they had a neutron heat shield hidden on the rocket, and they were doing testing. And theoretically, because it was Rocket Lab that built this spacecraft, they can take a lot of learnings from this and apply it to neutron. Do you think that they were thinking with that? Do you think that this is ongoing? Speculation time here.
I don't think this photon satellite and neutron should be put in the same sentence. I think they're completely different vehicles, but maybe they're utilizing and at least maybe acknowledging that the the SOOC that's in, or SOCC that's in Denver, and how to do the reentry piece is something of a success for them, as opposed to just flying in space and maybe tracking in space and operating in space. The reentry piece is a big piece. But in terms of the the materials, I'm not sure if that's what you were asking, but or if you were asking more of the landing piece.
Yeah, I mean, both the materials and the landings, like if they are able to use the re-entry data, like for if that's of any use in Neutron, whether it's how different materials act, or
it might help with telemetry or something like that. I think the materials for both products are going to be very different, but I honestly don't know the answer to that. So that's a speculation for me.
Okay. Well, in any case, this brings them to a group of very, 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 very few companies that have brought things back from orbit, and I think is a major, major achievement. And as usual, Rocket Lab doesn't get enough credit for it, so we make sure to do it. Congrats, Rocket Lab, and really, really well done for this major achievement.
Yeah, I agree. I think very big achievement, and it'll all take time, but I think it'll be rewarded for patience.
Yeah. And in other space news that happened this week, I think this was, I mean, we can come back to Rocket Lab. I'm trying to think if that's the best way, but whatever. We just carry on. We see where the conversation takes us. So other space-related news, there was another very big achievement by private companies. SpaceX launched on a Falcon 9 intuitive machines lunar lander called Odysseus, and it appeared that they had a flawless landing, and then after a day or so, it was unfortunately confirmed that the lunar lander landed on its side, and it's unclear what's going on from there. I think it's still a major achievement from the company. I want to get your take on this, and then I want to say some things about this connected to Rocket Lab.
Well, I think it's a good opportunity to show that this is still in full swing. I mean, this is pertinent to Rocket Lab as well, because they will be assisting with some of the machinery as well as the software that's going on the Firefly lunar lander, that I'm not sure when it will, but that's, I think, going to be launched by SpaceX. And so, that's not out of the realm, and this is kind of pertinent, and hopefully we can hopefully share together with NASA what's going on with this and what potentially went wrong. But from what I understand, I was actually watching SoFi Weekly, and somebody had stated in the comment section, which it sounds very plausible, that when the Intuitive Machines lunar lander actually hit the moon, it actually hit Roy of Crossroads, and it actually is what caused it to tip over. And so, Roy, shout out to you, my guy. You have a lot of strength and power. No, but in all reality, I think even if it might have hit harder than we expected, and I'm curious to see what they can salvage out of the opportunity. I think the last I heard, this was, I think, on Friday, so I didn't hear anything about it yesterday, but they were very confident in the one solar panel to be able to continue to charge the batteries, but they were not so confident and had not yet checked, because the sun had yet to turn around as much on one of the solar panels on the other side to see if it would actually help charge as well. But I think overall it's a good piece. I don't think we've done something like this in quite some time. So it'll be especially a private company. Like, I know we've sent rovers and stuff to Mars and stuff of the like. So it'll be nice to get that commercial piece aside, because everybody else that's currently trying to do this in India, China, etc., are all more privatized companies. And so to have America continue to establish its dominance and show that, hey, we're still really focused on this space race is cool. It actually makes me very proud to be an American. It makes me very proud to see that we're trying to do the big things. It might not necessarily be the way that we wanted it to be, but I think it allows us to have investments like Rocket Lab, whereas before it was all very much the public sector that had to do it, right? And we weren't able to actually invest in things like NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory and stuff like that. But overall, I think it was pretty interesting how they claimed success, and then a day later started having a lot of these conference calls that we're kind of seeing on the screen here right now. So it gives me the question as to, did they kind of claim things a little bit too early? And exactly what Adam's kind of saying here in the chat box as well is like, did they kind of claim victory too early, so that way when history goes down, they state, the fact that we were able to land on the moon again back in 2024, and not state that it was a complete failure. So, and it might not be a complete failure, right? We might still be able to get experiments. That part I haven't really heard about. I heard that, at least in this conference call, the 10 minutes or so that I listened to, there's still some experiments that they'll be able to do and get back to Earth. So to me, that is still considered success, even though it might not be 100% success. But yeah, still not 100%. So
yeah. And by the way, it seems to be like insanely hard to land on the moon, because I think in the last 3 years, India tried, Israel tried, China tried, and as far as I'm aware, all of them failed and crash landed into the moon. So even the fact that it landed on the moon in a way that you're able to communicate with it, so it didn't crash land, it didn't 100% hit the mark, but you still have something operational on the moon, is crazy impressive. And it just makes you think, like 50 years ago when Apollo landed on the moon with your iPhone has a faster computer chip than those landers, and they still made it. It kind of makes that achievement even bigger as time goes on. Like I kind of think about it. And yeah, as you mentioned, I saw the NASA director announce this achievement, and I'm not an American, but I felt almost being proud of what you guys have achieved, and it's really very unique that something that was only being done by governments is now completely being replaced by private companies. And yeah, there's only one country so far where all of this is possible. So very, very unique and interesting. And because we're a stock market focused podcast, I just want to show the chart of Intuitive Machines. I don't know if you managed to look at this company as an investment.
I know people had mentioned it, and it was one of those things where, I like to look at things on a holistic basis and not on a single news event sort of basis. And that's one of the problems with some of these things. I'm not one of those types of investors that really buys in for a couple days and sells out. That's just not my style. And I felt like that was what this was going to be. And I think that this is kind of what somebody had told me. It was kind of like a sell the news event. I think it was Mr. Tevis that told me that, and I was like, yeah, it sounds about right. And I think this is where the whole Rocket Lab thing is. It's like, you can't expect because one launch out of 45 goes up into space that magically the stock price is going to go up 10%. So it just doesn't work that way. It's about consistency and things like that. So I think one of those things that I was just trying to think about is if this really is an opportunity. Is a $750 million company, a couple of days ago. I don't know what it got to at its peak, probably over $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion, which is almost comparable to Rocket Lab in that respect, because Rocket Lab is only 20-30% bigger than that. And think about how much they've accomplished comparatively to this. It just seems somewhat unsustainable. And I'm happy for those that potentially made money. I think Monday or tomorrow will be very bloody for the company. I think that with that, anybody that does get into this, invest in it for the long potential. Or if you see this opportunity like this to get years ahead sort of gains, then take that opportunity. But I'm not sure what it looks like. I don't know if Robinhood has 24-hour trading on this or not, but it dropped pretty heavy in the after hours back into like the $6 or $7 range by the end of trading in after hours on Friday. So granted, it was up. It says 15% here. By the end of Friday close, it was down to the $6 or $7 range. So pulled back pretty aggressively because of the fact that it tipped over. But it just goes to show you, like, one event doesn't make a company. A company has to, just like with Neutron, like it might shoot up, 10, 15% that day, but it'll probably pull back. And where's the real money going to be made? The real money is going to be made after they do it 3 times, hopefully in 2025, and hopefully 5 or 6 times in 2026, and eventually get it to a cadence where it's launching potentially 20 times per year, and we're getting close to $1 billion in revenue from that particular vessel alone. So that's kind of the way I think of things, and maybe that's just too risk averse, but I hope and congratulate everyone that made money on the position.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm also someone who invests only on the long term, and just because of this news, like, I wouldn't invest into this company, but I wanted to at least have a look at it. And it's a very, very much cash burning company with very little money in the bank, and they very clearly need to raise capital even after this. And I keep coming back to, like, I don't get why Rocket Lab doesn't get any love. Like, this stock went 4x on, and the rally started when Falcon 9 launched the Lunar the Lunar lander, and that was the least risky part of the mission. Like, the Falcon 9 has launched, I don't know, like 100 times last year. All the missions successful, and so that wasn't even their achievement, and the rally was going all the way up until they landed on the moon. And at that point, as an investor, you knew that, okay, there is going to be massive dilution coming, because this is a great proof of concept for the company, but for them to stay alive, they need to raise capital, and yet you rally into this. So it's just, as you said, like, when you compare this to Rocket Lab is such a stable, well-running, oiled machine with a lot of track record behind it, very good money in the bank. You don't need to worry about bankruptcy, and yet it doesn't get any love. And then you have this, and it's 4x's in a week. So I guess it's just it's interesting. Rocket Lab is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Cool. Then, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say very true.
Yeah. The next news, I don't have it fully prepared here.
Well, I will say, like, I'm not saying that this is a bad investment. Sorry, I know I'm interjecting here. Just take it with a grain of salt. I think you hit on some key things there, Vince. Watch out for potential dilution, and watch out for how much cash on hand they have. I think that there's a lot of bullishness to still be had with the organization. Obviously, this was still, even though not a complete failure, it was a partial success. With that means they'll probably get further capital from NASA for partnerships going forward. So there's potential for them to continue, right? It's not like it's a one and done. So think about it from the long term. And I think this was their first attempt, if I remember correctly. So, with that, and by attempt, I mean it first attempt and partial landing, I guess, if you want to call it that. So keep that in mind. But also, I think NASA will also be looking towards having multiple lunar landers. That's just because that's how they're operating things now, and they're trying to do basically getting capital efficiency by outbidding each other and trying to make it as efficient as possible, right? Utilizing the capital process by not having a monopoly, having one or two potential contractors do it, and that's what we'll hopefully see with Rocket Lab's contribution for the Firefly lunar lander in the coming quarters.
Yeah. I mean, if you invest into Lunar, you have to. It's a very, very risky investment. There is, I think, a great bankruptcy risk as if they don't manage to raise capital, and then the only way they can raise capital is by diluting you. And I would think that, yeah, Rocket Lab is a much safer investment. That's all I will say. But yeah, do your own due diligence. I have done maybe 1 hour looking at the company, so I'm definitely not an expert at that. Cool. I don't know if you heard, I'm trying to pull up the news here. So this is sort of Rocket Lab related. The government, or I think it was SDA, canceled a multi-billion-dollar contract with Northrop Grumman because of cost overruns and difficulties developing the payload. And I was thinking that, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing the screen. Here we go. Did you hear about this news?
I hadn't actually.
Okay. Let me see if I can show. So US cancels multi-billion-dollar classified military satellite program. Oh, what happened? I'm not a subscriber. So they're citing here because of increased cost, difficulties developing its payload, and schedule delay. And the way I read this news is, it's a double-edged sword. So one of them is, I didn't know you can cancel contracts. So could you imagine if Rocket Lab's $550 million contract gets canceled by the government? That would really, really suck for Rocket Lab. But on the other hand, it happened because it was late and there was, cost overruns, and the government is less and less or more and more intolerant for these things when you have a vibrant space economy and you actually have companies that can deliver on time and deliver on promises within budgets. And I think this is like for the old space primes that are very used to these cost plus contracts where they can just bill the government and suck on the government's tit endlessly. It seems like that period is over, and you really need to deliver in this area. And it really gives space for new competitors, and I think it's overall a good thing for Rocket Lab. But I want to hear your take, if you can say something about this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough if people can't deliver and they have cost overruns. I mean, it puts potential for somebody like Rocket Lab, who's still somewhere in their infancy and might not necessarily have had a deal such as this, creating 18 individual vehicles. Granted, they did have the opportunity to warm up with the MDA subcontract from Globalstar, so there is that piece. But this is the big leagues, and it also has huge implications as to what Spice was talking about at TD Cohen, which is their hope is to not only get this particular SDA contract, but the future ones. I mean, it could be a pivotal point for the company to be able to not only get this, they got the first contract, to launch it and then potentially get subsequent contracts, because there are still more to be had. They anticipate this being a revenue stream going forward as they plan to launch that potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of these. So that being said, I think this could, if Rocket Lab goes down the same sort of path, unfortunately, and loses their contract, it could be pretty detrimental, because that could be a huge revenue stream that was banked on for being able to pay for the potential acquisition from the $335 million convertible loan. So it seems like the company is very confident in their ability to execute, and they have demonstrated execution ability. I'm not very familiar with Northrop's satellite building capability or anything of the like, but it could be detrimental. That being said, I think Rocket Lab has a great track record, and we'll hear more, I think, about the Global Star contract being fulfilled here in the next couple of months. If not, hear some, this week about how the progress associated with that is going. Maybe that's part of the reason why they reported preliminary earnings, so they can talk a little bit more about, have more of like an investor day presentation rather than talk through earnings. So I'm fairly confident that we'll be okay, but you can't tell, and we'll see what ends up happening. I've only heard good things from the space systems piece over at Rocket Lab, and the gross margin continues to do really, really well, meaning that they're able to develop these satellites and for cheaper for, I guess, internal costs, which means that at the end of the day, the contractor, or NASA in this particular case, or not NASA, Space Force, if it's a SDA sort of contract, then they could squeeze and put more people against us to help shrink that margin. I mean, a 30% gross margin is very good when it comes to space systems. So, I mean, would they be saying, we don't want it to be 30% for you guys, we want it to be 25%. So anyway, that might be a piece down the road once you have a couple more very good competitors. But at the moment, it seems like the space systems business at Rocket Lab is doing really well. But, it is something that's a little bit scary, but it could also be an opportunity for Rocket Lab to take on this contract as well, and take it over and help fulfill it. And that could be part of the reason why they took on that Maryland facility from Boeing. I think it was Boeing, or maybe it was Lockheed in general. I forget. It was a couple months ago. But yeah, sorry. Not 100% a trained answer or anything like that, but there's a lot of different avenues in which this could help or hinder the company depending on how Rocket Lab is able to execute.
Yeah. By the way, I saw a video by Scato, I think is his channel name, and he was showing different interviews about this newly acquired factory that you also mentioned, and how much star trackers they are able to produce, and they scaled up the production. And he is under the impression, and based on the data that he presented, I tend to agree with him that there should be a major announcement coming, because it doesn't make any sense that he showed that if you calculate out how many star trackers they produce, and you can see the price on their website, and they scaled it up to something like 2,000 per year, which I believe is like 500 satellites, because you need 4 per satellites. It's quite late, and I'm after driving like 9 hours straight. But he counted that just that would be like $160 million of extra revenue per year. And in the interviews, when they were asking the employees, they were like, yeah, we scaled up the production capacity to be able to produce this much. And it doesn't make any sense if you don't, like, if it's not going into actual spacecraft. So we will see what happens. So the last topic for today is earnings is this week. I believe it's on Tuesday.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Are you going to be?
Yeah, it sounds right. 27th. Yeah.
Are you going to be live streaming it?
It is after market close. So I was actually having that conversation. Will I be able to run back home? I have to check my schedule because I will be just coming back from vacation. But I know if it was the 20, I know that Celsius is before market open, and I'm unfortunately be having an interview at that time, so I cannot do the Celsius. But I will see if I can make Rocket Lab.
Okay.
So I think it'll be a lot of fun because I don't think we're going to be talking much about earnings, because earnings are pretty
exactly.
Yeah.
So my last question is, what do you think is going to be on the earnings call? Because the numbers were pre-released, and so there's not much about the numbers to go through. And we're going to have a whole lot of time with management, and the stock has really fallen into earnings, which is usually a very good sign, because that means the expectations are very, very low. Yeah,
$4, $5 is all the same to me. I don't. It's $2 billion, $2.5 billion. It might seem like a lot, but at the end of the day, it's still the same price. I think, in all honesty, they're going to give a lot of color on a little bit more detail as to what's going on with the SDA, their intention and potential paths forward. I think they're going to give a lot more color on what's going to be happening in the upcoming. We should be hearing probably more about the hot fire test for Archimedes here, because the TD Cohen said it was anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks away, if I remember correctly. So it could, or maybe he said it was end of March, early April, one of the two. But regardless, I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that, which is the huge pivot point, right? And I think they'll give a little bit more ideas as to what 2024 is going to look like, and really what the milestones will be, where we plan to get to. And maybe they'll get into maybe the TD Cohen interview was a little bit more off the cuff. I don't know if they'll discuss, what they're looking for from an acquisition target, or if they have one announced. It could very well be that they just state that capital will be used for an acquisition target that, is to be and he might just kind of keep it at what he did at TD Cohen and not really give too much flavor onto that. That's just kind of my initial thoughts. I don't think there's much else. He might give some ideas as to how the Globalstar contract is going, because I think they said in 1Q they were going to start delivering that and starting to see revenue. So I'd be very excited to see potential revenue forecasts for 2024, because I don't think we've seen one yet. And then really the cadence for if we're still on track for Electron, and as well as when we think the potential first launch for Neutron is, and what stage gates we need to get to before that truly happens.
Yeah. It's going to be an exciting one. I also think that, that they raised a very specific amount. So logically, you would know what you want to acquire, and maybe you would have had dialogues with the company before you raise the money. And I think also the banks, or the financing institutions that gave you the loan, they asked for a business plan and like how you paid back. So I think it would be quite logical with an announcement of what this potential acquisition is for the 355 million. And I saw some speculation out there that they said that they want to go more into the payload area, and that can give us potential clues on maybe the space infrastructure that they're planning to build, like which direction they want to go, and maybe we will get some updates on it. So those two would be very, very, very big news for the stock. So cool. I think we're going to keep this a short one today, because I have to help my wife unpack and fully arrive home from the vacation. But I really enjoyed it, as always. We almost had 90 people on this sort of random, out of schedule podcast. And Mateo, thank you so much from Mexico over there. Make sure we can still recognize you and you don't come back red as a crab. And hopefully we can do Rocket Lab earnings together. Let me know if you can.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let me know if it's on your channel or my channel. And
yeah, we will see. Yeah, fortunately, the first day I got a little burnt. I was too much in the sun, but I've been kind of keeping it cool, hanging out under a cabana, and keeping it laid back. So I haven't been in the sun too much. Believe it or not, I look very pink on the screen, but then I look in the mirror that's right across from me, and I don't think my nose is a little bit red, but everything else looks pretty normal. Maybe a little bit more tinged red, but I think it's really just the lighting in here. Because I was like looking at it on here, it looks like very pink, like on the front.
Yeah.
I feel it, and I'm like, it's actually kind of cold. Like if I was sunburned, it would be warm, right? So very excited. But shout out to Mateo Capital if anybody's interested. Minimum $1 million required to join. No, just a joke there, but very happy that everyone's doing well in their investing journey, and it's been a lot of fun being able to talk about Rocket Lab. And as always, it's a lot of fun to just talk about stocks in general. Just really love the whole vibe of going into and chatting about this stuff. It's just a lot of fun for me, and it's a nice release from work. And I hope to be able to find this sort of outlets at work as well, to be able to worrying about shareholder returns and stuff like that. That's where I feel like I really excel, and I understand it a very good bit. And patience, I think, is very key. But I think at the end of the day, getting a team together to put a good plan together is one thing, and then having the right people to execute that plan is another. And so I think what you're seeing a lot in the stock market, and this isn't necessarily for Space Systems, but in general, people are really good, big idea people, and they're really able to put these beautiful plans together. The thing that differentiates these people or these companies from the people that are able to put these big, fancy slide packs together and actually becoming the $1 trillion, $100 billion, $50 billion organizations are the ones that are actually able to execute. That's the Steve Jobs of the world, Tim Cooks of the world. That's the, I don't know who else, the Elon Musk of the world, the people that are actually willing to get their hands and fingers, deep into the engine bays to be able to build these damn things. And when you have too many suits around that are literally just trying to be CEO and, not willing to put on a white coat to be able to get involved and, put their hair in a hairnet, those are the type of companies that I'm not really about, too much showboating and rather like the flash rather than, and that might be good for a short-term trade, thinking of Astra in that respect, and no disrespect to anybody that unfortunately may have lost money in Astra or anything like that. But Peter Beck is of a different cloth, right? I mean, I think he really puts his money where his mouth is. When you hear him talk, specifically remember when that anomaly happened and he talked about it in the third quarter earnings. It's like this guy actually knows what the hell he's talking about, and he's able to be, is he as good as Elon? You don't need to be. There's other things out there that really will allow you to execute. And Elon, unfortunately, as much as I love him, he's got a lot of other things on his plate as well. Peter just has Rocket Lab to focus on, fortunately. So I feel like he's done a really good job since 2006. He's been the person that is able to launch, the second most U.S. launch vehicle 5 years running behind SpaceX. There's nobody else in the world that can say that, except maybe if you are not including U.S. only and you're including India or China. But in terms of U.S., that is the only people that can say that. And maybe a close second could be ULA, which is the combo between Boeing and Northrop. So if you think about it, it's like you have this guy who's been able to execute and go toe-to-toe with Boeing, Northrop, SpaceX, Jeff Bezos, and it's been continued to, and they have all the money, right? These guys have been bootstrapping and trying to create. So the fact that these guys are still even in the running just goes to show me, and the fact that they were oversubscribed on their convertible debt just goes to show me that this company's here to fucking stay. And I'm fired up. I love it. I'm excited for it. I hope a lot of my puts get put to me this week. I made a couple $100 here and there, just rolling them for the past couple months. But I think it's time to buy all those shares. And I think I'm up to like 40 contracts for my puts. So I'm about to buy probably close to another 4,000 shares. And that'll put me over, I think 11,000, 12,000 shares or something like that. So I'm all fired up. I think that this one is going to be my next big boy. And when this thing goes up to 15, 20 bucks, it's going to be a hell of a fun time. We're going to come back to Mexico, and we're actually going to start taking some capital in to make sure that we're able to get ourselves to the moon, Mars, and also Venus. So that's all I have to say about that. But I'm just excited, and think this is the next big one. I don't have to worry about Palantir anymore. Palantir's profitable. That one's off and running. That one just needs time. Rocket Lab also needs a little bit of time, but this one's the one that I'm focusing on right now, and I'm really excited about it. I think we're onto something really good, guys. I think we're really onto something really good.
Awesome. And on that note, we end, guys. Thank you so much for the almost 90 of you for being here with us on a Sunday night. And have fun and see you guys on earnings. Ciao, ciao.
Mas tequila.